Go ahead and get started with this webinar. Jack O'Connor is here with me, and the purpose of this meeting is to talk about the equitable share calculation for the ESSER grant. And I'll say that, I am the grant manager for the ESSER grant. Jack, of course, is our Title I director and our expert on Title I and in equitable share. So between us, we've kind of designed these documents that we sent out, and we're going to go over it with you and look for problems, questions, etc. And I am having trouble sharing my screen. I've lost control of my Zoom window. Jack, do you have the ability to share your screen?
We'll give it a shot. Which document do you want?
The process document.
Is it up?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. And again, what I'm going to do is just kind of walk through this. I know that the print's kind of tiny on here, but we did send this document out in advance. And basically, this goes through the whole journey we've been on here, where when the ESSER grant first came out, the Department of Education gave guidance that said the equitable share should be calculated on the basis of total enrollment of public schools versus the private schools that participate. There was a lot of complaints that that wasn't correct. There were some lawsuits, and there was a lawsuit that on September 4th, a judge in a district court in Washington, D.C. issued a judgment that said this was incorrect, and basically invalidated the guidance and the interim rule that the department had published. Last week, Secretary DeVos issued a letter that basically said we're not going to file an appeal of this ruling. It gave a simple reference to existing Title I statute for equitable share. And then very importantly also said that the department will not take action against the school district that by using the previous guidance gave out more equitable share assistance to a private school than what the new calculation is. So what that means is that anything that the school did prior to receiving notice that this rule was now invalid, the school doesn't have to go out and try and recover that excess amount. So faced with this, we kind of are back to square one in terms of calculating what the equitable share percentage is. And it basically, what we're saying is that we're going back to what we do in Title I, using the parameters though that we gathered at the time that the grant came out. So of course, for calculating equitable share, the Title I method is to take the low-income kids at private schools and divide that number by the sum of the low-income kids at public schools and the low-income kids at private schools. And that gives the percentage that is multiplied by the grant to come up with the total. So we have to go and do that. We sent out a spreadsheet to go with this, and we're going to hit that in a second. But I want to, first of all, just kind of walk through this process. So, and again, we don't have time to go back and do this, reprogram e-grants to do this like it does for Title I now. So we want to put this into a spreadsheet, ask you to send the spreadsheet to us, and then that will become part of the documentation of the ESSER grant. And the steps are, basically, if you are a district that had a consolidated application for Title I last year, and you have participants this year, then you need to do this. If in the data you gathered in May and June, you didn't have any private participants, you don't have to do anything. And basically what this is doing is saying that at the time the grant was issued, we were still in the last year's Title I year. So the public school information comes from what went on to the consolidated application last year. So again, the method used by the school to come up with low-income kids for the school, again, we're just taking it right off of last year's Title I application to say these are the low-income kids. But for the private school kids, we have to go through the process of determining how many low-income kids there are at each of the private schools. And in the Title I statute, there are some specific methods that are listed, and that was also put into guidance that the Education Department actually published last year around this time, that was never challenged because it was just for Title I, not for the ESSER grant. And one of the documents we sent out is kind of is recapping that, and it's called Poverty Measurement Tools for Determining CARES Act Equitable Participation. And in that document, Jack, do you want to call that up? I'm sorry, somehow I can't get the share screen thing here. And in here, if you read through this, there are 5 ways that a public school, 5 methodologies for determining what the number of low-income kids are at a private school. And so the task now is, for the public schools to reconnect with each of the private participants that signed up for this, and have to have a discussion about how many low-income kids are there. And again, it is in statute that it is public schools' right and the responsibility to select the best method for determining number of low-income kids at the private school. And it is possible to use more than one of these methods for different schools, right? So for the existing Title I schools that are private, if you have a method worked out, you can use that. If you also have homeschool kids, you can go and actually have a conversation about is that homeschool low income or not. Or it is possible to use the proportional calculation and just say for all of the homeschool kids, we're going to use the same percentage of low-income kids as we used in the public school calculation. So I'm going to pause there because, again, I don't want to walk through each one of these and what it means. But again, as you guys look at this, does this pose any questions that you have with this document, or going out and actually figuring out number of low-income kids at private schools?
Ken, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, Ken, this is Heather at Target Range in Missoula. I am wondering, you said something about using last year's calculations versus this year's calculations. So last spring at Target Range, we asked who wanted to participate in Title I, and all of our private non-public homeschools said we don't want to participate. But then we also asked them if they wanted to participate in the CARES Act funding, the ESSER funding, and 2 of them said yes. Does this new guidance tell us that we can just go back to the documentation that said they didn't want to participate?
No, it's clearly in the ESSER grant, in the conditions for that grant, that a private participant can step forward and say, I didn't participate in Title I, but I want to participate in this. And if they do, then you do have the responsibility to work out a private share or an equitable share percentage and give the value that you calculate. However,
Okay.
the difference is that at the time we did the ESSER grant, all they had to do was give you the total enrollment. Now it is possible for you to go back to those schools and say, so we want to have a discussion about low income, about how to estimate low income kids at your school. And, you know, it is certainly possible that a private school at that point might say, well, then I really don't want to participate in this. And that's also acceptable if they decide to back out when you have this new discussion with them.
Would I just document that conversation?
You certainly should document all of your conversations with the private school. And yes, definitely, if they are saying, I don't want to participate now, I would certainly get something in a confirming email or something saying that you agreed you don't want to participate. Absolutely.
Thank you.
And this is Todd Wester in Livingston. So to clarify, we're just reaching back to those schools that said that they did want to participate in the ESSER Act funding. We don't have to do another mailing to all of our home and private schools, correct?
That is correct. Again, at the time that we did this, that was the time for participants to step forward and say they wanted to participate.
Okay, and Ken, my other question has to do with, and maybe you're going to cover this later, whether the conditions for how the funds can be used have changed along with the other modified guidance.
No, there's no change in the guidance on what the funds can be used for. Again, the primary thing is that it has to be used for an expenditure that results from the COVID virus. And then the allowable expenses after you've satisfied that condition are really broad. Other questions? Okay, Jack, if you want to take your screen down, I think I finally got the share screen thing, and I'm going to try and share mine. Oh, and now my screen has been disabled. So Jack, can you pull up the spreadsheet? So again, I pulled together this spreadsheet, and it's designed to basically go through and do what eGrants does in Title I, which is to calculate the equitable share, and then to also calculate the amount that's allocated to each of the private participants. And so it's pretty straightforward. You know, at the top for those school districts that are consolidated, meaning an elementary and a high school district that files one application, use the top box. And for a school district that's not, that's just a single district, then the bottom box. And it's just really making sure that you include the ESSER grant, the related services ESSER grant in the calculation. But then it's basically, again, from the last year's Title I application, the number of public school kids. And then down below is where you should start listing all of the private schools. And in the original application for the ESSER grant, you would have listed the total enrollment, and I would include that as well. And then again, the result of that exercise is coming up with the low income kids. And I would list that. And as Heather mentioned, for those cases where a school decides not to participate, again, for documentation, I would leave them on here. And I would put into this low income column, I would put a 0 showing that there are no low income kids. It is possible too to work with fractions on this. So that, for example, if you have a mix of private schools and homeschool kids, and you do a specific conversation with each private school, and then decide you'll take the homeschool participants and just use your percentage, you can go ahead in and apply that percentage to, like if the enrollment is 1 and your free and reduced percentage was the basis and it's 50%, you can put in here a low-income kid that's equal to 0.5. And what that will do is give you a correct total of low-income kids. And then when you multiply it out for the allocation, then each of those private school kids would get 0.5 of what that per student share is. You know, when you read through the different ways of calculating this, when you look at the proportional share, for example, for the example that I just gave you, I will give you a warning that if you take the kind of the easiest way out is to say, so our public percentage for low-income kids is 50%. So we'll just apply 50% to all of the total enrollments. When you get done, the amount of the calculated amount of equitable share will be exactly the same as if you use total enrollment, because basically in that fraction, you're basically of total enrollment, you're multiplying by the same percentage on the numerator and denominator. So you actually get the same result. But that won't happen if you're doing a blend of actually getting a count of low-income kids at each of private schools and then using proportionate share for some that it's not reasonable to do that. And a school district had filled this sheet out and pointed out a problem to me this morning. So I'm actually going to send a revision of this. And the problem is that, you know, up here, after you put in all the low income kids, the formula will put them in up here and calculate that equitable share. We show it displayed as 2 digits in a percentage, but the calculation actually could go out for 10 digits. And that difference in rounding can actually make a difference in what the total amount is. And I discussed it with Jack this morning, and we agreed that in other places we use the convention that we use the rounded percentage is how we calculate. And so I have a spreadsheet that will say that it's revised as of October 6th, and at the very top it will have in italics the note that this was revised for that percentage, and we'll get that out to everybody after the meeting here today. And again, after you the spreadsheet will do the calculations after you fill in this bottom portion of all the participants and the count of low-income kids, and you put in your public low-income kids. Then this will all calculate out, and you'll have your equitable share percentage, the total amount that goes to the public school, the total amount that goes to the private school, and then out of that private amount, the total that's allocated to each participant. So again, let me pause there, and does anyone have any questions about this?
I have a question. I'm sorry. In your graph, there's an equitable shares percentage. What is the difference between the equitable shares percentage and the proportional value from the proportional calculation? What is the difference between those two?
So again, one option that you have is to take the method that you used or the results of what you calculated in the public school. And for example, if the method in the public school is to use the free and reduced price lunch percentage, right? That's how you calculated it for the public school. One option to use is to go down and use that same percentage for each of the private participants. Just multiply their total enrollment by that same percentage as the estimate of low-income kids. So the free and reduced price percentage would have been used for the public school, the proportionate calculation. But if you don't opt to use that for all of the private ones, then when you actually calculate the number of low-income kids by asking the private schools some questions about low-income kids, Then when you fill that amount in, this percentage that you calculate will be different than what the free and reduced price lunch that you used for the public school. So this number is actually calculated, and it will be the same as your measure if you apply it to all of the private schools. But if you don't, then this calculated amount will be different.
So within the E-grants last year, there is a number in targeting step 4 that outlines what the equitable share percentage is. So are you saying we can use that number or the proportional share calculation?
No, because again, when the guidance first came out that the rule was invalid, we sent some advice out saying use that proportionate share times the grant amount and limit your private spending to that, at least until we see what other guidance is going to come out from the department. But one of the inequities in that is that, as has been said already, there are a lot more participants in the ESSER grant than there were in last year's Title I grant. So if all you did was apply that percentage against the grant amount, it would not be fair to the participants potentially from the private school who decided to participate this year and did not participate last year. What is true is that the amount that you used to calculate the public school, and that should show up in that in the Title I calculation as well, that percentage you can apply to the other private schools. Let me pause there. Jack, any comments from you on this?
If you were to use the percentage of the low income or the kids from last year, I think some of our calculations showed that actually gave a fairly high amount. So when you're looking at the calculations, getting the actual percentage of the kids at the non-public school will be more helpful to the district. In many cases, what happens is the districts used the proportional share amount of their own free and reduced lunch count and applied that to the non-public school. And so it puts you back in the same exact boat as using the enrollment count that Ken earlier explained. So the only advantage as a district that you're going to have with the ESSER's funds is actually to find out what the free and reduced count percentage is at those non-public schools. Otherwise, as Ken stated, your percentages are going to be exactly the same, and the district is going to be setting aside just about exactly the same amount of equitable share funds as they would have using the enrollment count.
Jack and Ken, can you point us to where on OPI's website we can find that document you were referring to in terms of the ways we can figure out if people are in our private homeschools are actually in the low income category?
So we sent this out. Dylan Clapmeyer included it in his email that he sent out. We haven't got it posted on the web yet, but we will.
Thank you.
So I have a question.
Sure.
Our private school that participates in Title I draws kids from multiple districts, particularly 2 very large districts adjacent to us. So previously, the way we calculated was our in-district student numbers versus their in-district student numbers residing. And when this ESSER came out, we were told it was not in district, it was total enrollment. Is that still the same, or can we go back to just the students that they have that are from our district and just the students we have that are from our district?
So Jack, I'm going to defer to you on this. I remember this came up as the applications were coming in.
You'll use the attendance of of the private school within your district boundaries. So if you've got, let's say one non-public school and there's kids coming in from out, you're going to just have to use the numbers that you got from that non-public school. I think that's the way the grant is set up. And it's one of the, my understanding, it's one of the pieces of the law that wasn't written clearly.
So you're saying use the ones that go there that reside within our district. So if they have 142, but they have 71 that reside in our district, we can use the 71,
No, I think you have to use the total enrollment.
the 142.
Yeah.
So basically we have, instead of apples to apples, we're sharing, we're sharing ours with the people from the large districts as well. And they're not paying for them.
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm looking at the questions now. As far as sending the spreadsheet back, Jack typed in my address. And again, what will happen with this is we typically, now the equitable share calculation is documented in eGrants because it's a module. But this spreadsheet that you send in will now become part of the grant, both for your purposes and ours. And for example, at the time when the auditors show up and ask the question, what have you done with the CARES Act money? And then ask, how did the equitable share work out? We both will have this spreadsheet to share to show what we did. Jack, there's a question here about who qualified for the CEP. Can you answer that one?
Yeah, I just put something in the chat. CEP can be pretty complicated, especially if you have a private non-public that uses it, and then if you're a district that uses it too. And you'll have to look at the calculation for CEP as provided in eGrants. And I think it's just best just to contact me and we can work through that together. And I put my email in the chat box.
Hey, Ken, someone suggested that you actually put some numbers in the spreadsheet and walk through this. I'd be happy to volunteer my school district.
So again, I'm having an issue that I can't share my screen. So Jack, do you think you'd be able to, rather than yours, Heather, I would just go ahead and put some easy numbers in. Jack, would you be able to do that?
Trying to bring it up now. Did it pop up?
Yeah, it's what's showing.
Okay.
So I would go into that. It doesn't matter as far as the name and school, but right there, why don't you put in $100,000 and then 5,000 and 3,000. And then nothing in those lines, because again, this was a consolidated. In the public low-income kids, a nice round number like 500. And then if you go down to the first row down below, under private schools, and for the name of the private school, you can type in private school. And for enrollment, put in, no, you don't want to put anything in there. That's a formula, Jack.
Oh.
But down below in that first line for enrollment, put in 100 and 10 low-income kids. Then under, so I'm confused why you must have changed something in the formula when you went in there, Jack.
Hey, Jack.
Yeah,
If
he
you hit-
typed over it, so the formula's
if you-
gone.
If he hits Control Z 3 times, it'll go back.
I'll just bring the spreadsheet back up again.
Yeah, again, you only want to fill in the shaded cells in the spreadsheet.
I'm sorry, I'm having problems with my screen now too, so give me a sec here. Yeah, because now I can't find it on my screen. Sorry.
Sorry about that. Again, I'm not sure what happened with setting this Zoom meeting up, but clearly we're technically challenged right now. But again, as we were going through there, it's that simple of filling in the shaded cells, and you don't fill in the sum of private school low-income kids. You just enter the data down below, and you will get the calculation that comes out. You're back.
So Ken, quick question, is the related services, that's the ESSER special ed allocations, right?
Yes, it is.
And it was split elementary and high school?
There should have been a separate allocation for elementary and high school, yes.
Huh.
Again, it's possible that in that grant that the elementary school acted as the administrative agent. And so you can find that information by going into the allocations page, but it wasn't always true. So again, I would suggest that you look at the ESSER grant. And again, there has to be an application put in for both the high school and the elementary school in order for that grant to be processed. So again, in those cases, it's pretty easy to go out and find the application for the high school and the application for the elementary school and get the award amounts. Okay, so there's the calculation. And again, I will just say that I'm going to post on the web and we'll send out again the spreadsheet with that correction on rounding for the percentage. And then it's, again, I think it's pretty straightforward. The hard part in this process is going to be determining the number of low-income kids for each of the private schools.
And Ken, I couldn't find, really quick, sorry guys, I couldn't find the email from Dylan that had that guidance in there.
Oh.
I just went back into the search.
So I can certainly forward it to you, Heather. And we'll get with Dylan on sending this out again with the correction because he's actually traveling this morning.
So one of the things I'd like to point out is, and just kind of reiterate what Ken said, is that as you as the public school district have 5 options to select for calculating the low income count. And there's no argument for the non-publics on this. So whatever you choose, they're going to have to go along with. And if you were to go off of an actual free and reduced form and filling that out, and the non-public school chooses not to do that, then they would no longer be eligible for ESSER's funds.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll pause here. Oh, there's another question that came up. Are non-publishers not registered with the county superintendent eligible? I assume that means non-publics. Jack, do you know the answer to that question?
Type it in the chat box right now.
Okay.
And they had to be registered with the county superintendent on or before March 13th, 2020.
Right. On the question, sorry, there's a question about addressing the matter of funds already spent that no longer have that much allocation. Again, what the Secretary DeVos put into her letter was that the Department of Education won't be trying to come out and recover funds that were paid out in good faith based on the prior guidance. So if you have actually paid out more than what the new calculation is, then you're simply done. There's no more services or materials due to the private school, and you're not obligated to try and get it back. However, what that also means is that whatever that amount is, the public school has lost in a sense, because neither the federal government nor the OPI is going to make that up in your budget. So, you know, in terms of recovering materials, again, what they have said is you don't have to do it, but you can have a discussion with the private school about recovering the excess, if it's at all feasible.
Jack, can I ask you one quick question again?
Sure.
Yeah, this is Andy. Hey, you said that they had to be registered for homeschool by March, what, 2020?
13th. It was
So
the law.
These new people, since we came back to school, that decided they wanted to homeschool, they are not eligible for this, correct?
Correct.
If they are, okay. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to point out that Ken was talking about the recovering of funds, there's a section in the Code of Final Regulations. It's 34 CFR 81.33, and it basically says that if the entities receiving federal funds do so in good faith according to the guidance and rules that are written, then they can't be held accountable to any change in the law. And I think one of the things that popped up in one of the letters that came out from one of the victors in the court case said that districts needed to go out and recoup those funds. As Ken said, you can try, but the non-public doesn't really have an obligation to give any of them back. And again, because everybody acted in good faith.
Okay, any other questions about this? Sorry for the technical difficulties. I hope that this is all clear what we're doing. We have recorded this and we'll post it for those who weren't able to attend today. And if you have any questions, again, feel free to contact me and we'll try and get any questions answered as we go forward. Thank you all very much.